Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us for another webinar. As you can see, we are working very hard to bring to you webinars of photographic value. Planning these webinars involve a great deal of work in regards to identifying potential guest speakers, conducting pre-webinar meetings, preparing material for promotion, including write-ups, commentary, answering emails. However, it gives us great satisfaction to see that after all this hard work, our webinars are attracting a lovely crowd week after week. This makes us extremely delighted to note that notwithstanding we are deprived to meet physically at the club, the purpose of these webinars are serving both existing members to continue engaging with other fellow members and also non-members connecting with us through Zoom or through the live Facebook stream to get a taste of what our Thursday club nights at the Malta Photographic Society really offer. Hoping at least this would serve as a good promotion to increase the Society's membership platform, which is notably one of the few sources of income of the Society. And yes, we are really trying to make it look like a normal Thursday night by inviting you to join 15 minutes before for some informal socializing, before we actually get to start with our feature presentations. As we mentioned presentations, we will soon be publishing pipelined webinars for May, with another good lineup of both foreign and local guest speakers. Many would agree with me that photography is a form of art where one can freely express his thoughts and emotions or convey a story through a picture, and today's webinar with Mr. Rikki O'Neill is a perfect example where both creative artistry and photography converge, resulting in captivating images. Rikki O'Neill is a self-taught artist hailing from Scotland. He began his career as a cartoonist with DC Thomson Limited and has produced hundreds of cartoons for the Sunday Post, as well as a story illustrating for the My Weekly magazine. He is a creative photographer and artist by profession. Rikki combines his artistic and photographic skills to produce award-winning images in monochrome and color, and has worked in both film and in digital in the course of his artistic career. He describes his photography as being about images that try to evoke emotion with the viewer by creating a painterly illustrative quality. Through his unique vision, artistry, and digital skills, Rikki has produced many unique and emotive images. Many of his images have won acclaim, both nationally in the UK and internationally. Mr. O'Neill has served on the Royal Photographic Society Visual Arts Associate and Fellowship panels. He is also on the Roll of Honour of the Scottish Photographic Federation, a Fellow of the Irish Photographic Federation, a Master of the Photographic Alliance of Great Britain, and has been elected as a member of the London Salon. His works has been exhibited widely. Rikki O'Neill is a friend of the Malta Photographic Society, who in the past chaired the judging panel for the prestigious 44th National Competition and Exhibition in 2009. A couple of thanks, as I usually do. Thank you to Stephen Buhajar for his support to help me put up these webinars, Joseph Mifsud, our technical guru, for streaming our webinars live on the MPS Facebook page, the MPS Exco for their ongoing support, and also the Facebook group admins for supporting us by promoting our webinars on their pages, namely in surname order, Azzoppardi Tony from Fotografija Bejn il-Ħbieb, Kutajjar Alexander from Photography Shots, and Debono Johan from All Photography. I will now hand over the floor to the President of the Malta Photographic Society, Mr. Stephen Buhajar, to share with us some brief news regarding the Malta Photographic Society. Over to you, Stephen.
Good evening, fellow members of the Malta Photographic Society. Thanks, Vince, for your detailed introduction. And thanks, Mr. Rikki O'Neill, for accepting the Society's invitation to share with us a slice from your photographic collection. I remember Mr. O'Neill giving us a presentation at the club, and that was on Thursday, 30th April 2009. Is it a coincidence that we have Rikki again with us today, 22nd April, which happens to be exactly 12 years after his first encounter with our members? I must say it is. But his photographic work has evolved, and so will be today's presentation. Rikki prepared a good array of astounding ethereal images from his portfolio with the aim to show us a combination of his artistic and photographic skills in producing outstanding, creative, illustrative, award-winning images. For these past 4 decades, Rikki combined his artistic and photographic skills to produce color and monochrome prints, and with the digital era, he is now enjoying the creative freedom that technology provides. Personally, I love the combination of colors Rikki uses in his works, the ideas, lighting, and the surrealistic style, which sometimes reminds me of the famous Spanish artist Salvador Dalí. As Vince rightly stated, Mr. Rikki O'Neill is a fellow of the Royal Photographic Society, a master of the Photographic Alliance of Great Britain, and is on the roll of honour of the Scottish Photographic Federation. I would like to thank Mr. Lewis Ajus, the Society's former president, who was the key player to get in touch with Mr. O'Neill, who in his words described Rikki as a real gentleman with a soft Scottish accent and a person full of humour. Last Saturday was the closing date for the April stay-at-home competition. We had a very positive and encouraging participation with 27 participants and a total of 81 projected images. These will be judged this Saturday at the premises. Judging will start at around 2 in the afternoon, and from the comfort of your home, sitting on a sofa with a hot cup of tea or coffee in your hands, you can follow the judging live. This is the first time that the Society will be streaming live such an event, so please, excuse us shall we encounter any issues during the transmission. Mr. Joseph Mifsud, our IT manager, is doing all the necessary preparations to stream this judging, but you never know. The first time can be strenuous, and for the committee, this is a learning curve for improvement. During these past weeks, we also had to upgrade our internet service to be compatible and optimize the speed connection to make this event possible to stream. All participants are going to receive from me a link by email. Other MPS paid-up members who wish to join can do so by accessing the Zoom link, which I am going to post on our MPS Facebook page. Competitions news have been missing for these past months. Competitions give you a target, a goal to improve your body of work. Submitting your works for a competition is a challenge and helps you not only to produce different images, but to improve your skills in perspective, presentation, and execution. Moreover, competitions help you to gain exposure locally and internationally in the photographic industry. Thus, I encourage you to start once again submitting images for competitions locally and also internationally. From time to time, we do send emails of international competitions. On the MPS Facebook group and page, we also started posting competitions which have big monetary value and which are free to participate. Keep tuned and be active. At the moment, the Exco is compiling documents like past editions of newsletters and magazines issued by the same society with the intention to be collected and binded together for future reference. The society's history needs to be preserved, and I am making an appeal that if you have any interesting material published by the society and you need to donate, kindly speak to one of the Exco members. In the coming weeks, we will be approaching some of you, especially the ones who have been enrolled as members of the society for a long time about this matter. These are the society's news for this week. More updates will be given to you next week. wish you all an enjoyable evening with our Scottish friend, Mr. Rikki O'Neill. The floor is yours, our prolific artist.
Thank you, Stephen. Before we start with our feature presentation, I would like to bring to your attention that if you have any questions, please send to me through the chat and I will coordinate with Rikki accordingly. Otherwise, if you wish to speak, you may use the reactions button by choosing the hand on the bottom panel of the screen. You might also see a poll on your screen. I urge everyone to participate in these polls to create a healthy discussion and have the audience interact in these webinars. Of course, Rikki, you can also hand to me if you want to make any questions to the audience, and we can create a poll accordingly. So without further ado, I introduce Rikki. I've opened your mic, Rikki. I think
Rikki,
you're still
okay.
Okay.
Are we okay?
Yes, okay, Rikki.
It's coming up. I'm trying to share screen. It's telling me host disabled attendee.
Yes, you can share the screen now, Rikki. I've opened your...
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yes. Your access rights.
Thank you. Okay, get rid of that. Okay. Okay, you can see that. Is that coming up okay? Everybody okay on that?
Yes, Rikki.
Good, thank you. Thank you all for basically the fantastic introduction, very in depth, and and I thank you for that. It's great to be actually back involved with Malta. Malta's always had it's always been a very strong part of my heart, especially through the meeting of people that I've met over the 2 times I've been there, and just wonderful people that you all are in Malta. So as you can see from my title, it's Ragbag and Talltales. Now the Ragbag is really just an eclectic gathering of lots of images that I've created over the years. And as regards the Talltales, well, it's really entirely up to you whether you believe anything or any word that I say about it, because there may well be some doubt. But we will move on, and basically what I want to do is I want to start off I'm just going to start off with some surreal images, because it was really the surreal work that suddenly changed my thinking. I became very influenced by a photographer called Ben Goossens, who you probably will know his work. And once I'd seen some of his work, I decided that's the road I want to go down for, certainly for some sort of road. I can never ever stay on a road. I'm always changing roads. I'm taking left, right, going forward, stepping backwards. That is the way I've always worked. So basically, and what you're going to see now is probably a selection of images that will in some cases may look like I'm using the same textures, which I am, but the idea is that to be able to use them in different ways so that they actually look different. So I'm starting off with this image, which was basically just a couple of characters I photographed in Barcelona, fairly straightforward texture base, which was a photograph of a cracked base in a dockyard in Gloucester down in England. And so we move on to this image. This image just came at a time, it's basically the main characters were photographed in Edinburgh, at the Edinburgh Festival, the international there. And it was a time where, prior to this, most of my photographs would have been quite strong, quite colourful. And there was a time where I decided that it needed to change, and I felt that the colours needed to be subdued. And basically that's what I tried to do with this. So I've really softened the colours and had more of a kind of blending effect into the textures that are there. Including, again, you can see the base is similar one to the previous. Surreal images, there's always a situation where people say, oh, I can't do this. Surreal images doesn't work for me. I don't know how to do it. But the simple answer for me was, and I always said it, and I tell everyone, the ideal situation, in order to create something that's a little bit surreal, is just change your focus on size. So if something is small, make it big. And if something is big, make it small. And just so you're using the opposite. And that in itself is the first step to making something that's a little bit surreal. This was mainly the feet were photographed in Melbourne, Australia, just a statue. And the figure there was a figure just in a museum looking at something on a roof. I do like to be a little bit different with what I'm doing, and I do get influenced by lots of other people's work, which I think is always a necessity when you're trying to move on and create something a little bit different. The original thinking on this image was actually seeing an illustration of a fish coming through a window, and then I thought I could use that. What a good idea! And it was just a matter of how I pieced the image together. So what I've got in this situation is I've got a real person, you know, a real person from the neck down, but the head is actually a mannequin's. It's a mannequin's head. It's a short mannequin, and I've put the person into this set of you know, a water base, which was really just, you know, it was photographed in an aquarium basically, with some penguins swimming about in it, and I've just tidied basically that up. But what I did here was I've added a base to it, and I've added a room. Now the room has been created. So basically what I've done is just drawn shapes, added a colour to the shapes, and I'd added some noise in order to give it a bit of texture to make it look like a room. And so I've created the door and the skirting board that's round there in order to get the effect. The fish was basically photographed in a museum, and all I've done is added some shells just to make it a little bit different and more sea-like. Simple images really are, you know, sometimes images look really, really complicated, but when you see the bits and pieces put together, sometimes they're actually very, very simple. So what I've got here is that same water effect that you saw before, a textured background, which is really just a cloud effect against a darker base. The boat in the background is actually a toy boat, you know, so it was actually being held up by a woman who was doing a puppet show at a garden festival. And the skulls were photographed in Australia as a painting on a wall. And what's his name, our famous pirate was photographed as a character in London. Textures are very, very much important to my type of work, and it means a lot to me that I'm forever photographing textures, and I use them just about in every image that I ever make, including my paintings, my digital paintings. And so there's textures used in this one, and a nude effect. And again, nudes were not part of what I would normally take, because I'm not one of these people who likes to go to nude shoots and then just use the nude shoot, which has been photographed by 7 or 8 other photographers. What I like to do, and I believe, is that you should take that image away and create something different with it. And so this is what I've basically done with this. The 3 animals there are actually, they were stuffed animals. They were photographed in a museum and pieced together in order to give the effect that I've got here. This one's entitled Bringing Home the Bacon. And again, just a textured background. A little toy house. It's just photographed in a children's museum. You create the base. The base is, again, was photographed in Portmeirion in Wales. The character that's in the foreground was photographed in the Beamish town set just outside Newcastle. The pig photographed down in, it's amazing, I mean, every sort of parts of the images are coming from all over the country. So the pig's been photographed down in the south coast of England. I've digitally cut a hole in the back and stuck some money in it and put a little bit of bacon in the pocket. And all I've done in the background really is I've had a little light in the window and a little bit of smoke coming out just to give it a bit of life. My models, when the girl who I was photographing and I saw she had these socks on, I always knew that somewhere along the line, this type of image I wanted to take. And so I actually went about doing it. You'll recognize the texture again at the base. And then just a conglomeration of some duplications of the buildings in the background and some moon effects in the background. And these moons have all been created from textures. They're not real moons, they're just created using the texture in order to give you a feeling that it is a planet of some sort. And the shadow, the main characters, the people characters, are actually a contre-jour shot that was photographed on the beach in Crosby near Liverpool. I went into a gallery in St Andrews, and when I walked in there was a picture on the wall of about 10 fish carrying a fishing boat, and I thought, this is a fantastic idea. I like that idea. That was the end of my visit to the gallery, because I felt I had to do something with that. And I went home that afternoon and I created this in the afternoon. So once again, using the same type of water, a little bit of warping to make it look a little bit rougher, textured background with clouds, and obviously the fish were photographed in the museum. The little boat itself was actually just photographed in a shop window in the fishing town of Arbroath. This one's called Gone Potty. And again, that's the girl that you saw earlier on in the water with the mannequin's head. This time, you know, it seems a shame that I keep taking her head off, because she was not an ugly person. She was quite pretty, actually. So I've just stuck a pot of flowers into the head in order just to make it a little different. It's just an attempt to try and do something that's a little bit different, but still making them, give them the feel that they're a little bit more towards art. And again, same situation. Take the head, put it inside a vase, a jar, add some greenery, some flowers to it. The butterflies. Butterflies are actually, they were photographed in a museum, so they're actually photographed straight down into a box in order to get the butterflies. Local Primark, I don't know you have a Primark in Malta, but it's one of the local shops here. So again, just to mark it, photographed in the window, and then added to that similar base. And there again are the same characters that you saw earlier on, using the same sort of type of textures, backgrounds, in order to create an image that is very, very different. The background here is a texture, and so the actual room is not real. It's been pieced together in order to give the feeling of a room. The girl was obviously standing on the chair. I've just altered the shape of that. I've turned it around, and I've just cut bits and pieces out of it in order just to make it a little bit different. Texture background once again, and what you've got here is just the girl and the hair, which I've left the colour in, but I've removed the eyes and the mouth and the nose, and that's what her eyes, nose and mouth are actually now being put into the cards that are actually hanging from the line. Again, just trying to do something a little bit different, a little bit more artistic. Painterly, so what we've got here actually is a proper painting of some famous person, where I've removed the head and I've added the bird to it and stuck it into a totally different background. I mean, the church, the derelict church in the background was photographed in Ireland, as was the girl's face. She was from Ireland also. Once again, simple situations. There's the boats are just small boats that were photographed in fact, they were photographed in a hotel in Holland. I was judging the Holland Super Circuit there, and this hotel had fantastic props in it, so, and boats were part of that. But the actual girl effect there is actually it's just a small statue that I photographed in a shop in Wales, and it's a matter of just putting it together along with real water and the sky, a bit of colour, and adding, you know, a little bit of texture also in it to make it a little bit different. Again, trying to be doing a little bit something different is, you know, the texture in the background, the tree and the grass. But all I've done is just warp the shape, and I've put in just a picture of just leaves and bits and pieces, and then I've dropped the girl in it to give a feeling of what lies beneath. A real snail here, and the real picture of the buildings in New York, but the little model there is actually, again, is just a little toy. It's just, you know, it was photographed in the shop window once again, and all I've done is I've softened the image a little bit, trying to give it a little bit more lifelike effect, and then laid it on top of the photograph of that I'd taken of the snail. The King in New York. So you've got New York buildings in the background, and you've got Charlie Chaplin sitting on a cloud, beneath a cloud. And these clouds are actually, what I do is I actually, especially on a day like today, which is beautiful sky and these lovely powder white clouds, I photograph the clouds, and from the clouds, I actually make a brush so that I have brushes that I can then just paint the clouds in. So, you know, it saves me having to go out and, you know, search and try to get different clouds. I can make the clouds from the clouds I already photographed, and I can just paint them in quite easily. As I've done here, creating something very surreal. It's very unlikely you would see a boat or a lighthouse up in the sky, but it gives it's a talking point, and it's, you know, against a textured sky in the background. And again, once again, the toy boat and the water. Now the water actually was part of really quite heavy water. I was on a cruise and I photographed the water from the side of a boat, and all I've done is actually invert the water around. I've turned it around, I've changed it to give the feeling that the boat is actually sitting on top of a very, very strong, powerful wave.
Rikki, sorry to interrupt. We've got a question from Stephen.
Okay, go on.
He's asking you, do you visualize and do the photography afterwards, or from the photos you take, visualize and create your images?
I take and gather my pictures. I have no idea what I'm going to do until I sit down and I pull out bits and pieces. I start with a texture. I'll add something to it. I might then try to create some form of landscape feel, a little bit of depth into the picture. And then I just add bits and pieces and I just play about with it until I feel comfortable I've got something going. Very few pictures in my photographic images are planned images. They're just created as I go along.
Thank you, Rikki.
Okay. Again, you know, simple image. The only thing really I've done to this is, you know, I've added the face, which was the mask with all the bits and pieces around it. But I've actually added basically what looks like a splatter effect. Now it is a splatter effect because a lot of the things that I do, and you'll see some of the images come up there, I create effects by dropping blobs of ink and coffee and, excuse me, all sorts of, you know, paint into bits of paper, and then I make brushes from them so I can actually play about with them and paint with them. And then I've just used a monochrome background. I often like to use monochrome and colour together. I like to soften images down a little bit, and by using monochrome and just taking a little bit of colour out, sometimes I think it works really quite well. Just a painting. This is a street painting on a wall, but I photographed a mannequin. I've got a thing about photographing mannequins. I can't help but stop myself from photographing mannequins. So all I've really done is use the base of the painting that was on the wall and put one of these mannequins into that picture. There are times when I don't know why I create a picture. I just, as I said, I keep building. I've got bits and pieces. I keep building them up. I add things. I mean, the wall in the background I've created, and I've just created it from a texture. And I've just, you know, why I've added a mannequin on the right hand side and then a mannequin's head on the left hand side, I don't know. It was just something that I felt that needed to be done, and it kind of worked as a surreal type image. One of the things I like to do is change faces, and you'll see that coming up quite a bit. Lots of things that I do with are changing faces, and most of these faces are actually real faces. They're faces that have began as a real someone's face, and I've altered those faces in order to get the effect that I want. I've got a lot of images that I'm going to go through, and I know that you plan on finishing at 6 o'clock. Is that correct?
We have normally till 7:30, but if we're a bit overrunning, don't worry, we will guide you, Rikki.
There are a lot. That may well be in some cases, because I know there's a lot of images here, and we started a good bit later. I might just run through images just to let you see them. You know.
Yes, don't worry, we will guide you. But
so once again, you can see this, the mannequin's head. It's a picture of myself, believe it or not, there. But once again, a similar sort of texture. And again, just using, you know, the things that I see, Barcelona, one of those street acts where, like, you know, the head's coming through the table, and there was being on a table, there'd be glasses and bottles of wine there, and then just piecing it all together with, you know, I'm taking and making a different type of picture from it. And again, same sort of situation. The chap here was actually standing in the street. He was actually speaking to a child, but I liked his pose, and I thought it kind of worked to look like he could be sitting on something. So basically, that's what I've done. I've put him onto the back of a fish. And why would you have a flying fish with somebody on the back of it? Don't ask me. I don't know. That's what I did, you know. And again, just trying to be a little bit creative. The rocks in the background were photographed in Australia. The actual sunset is actually a sunset that we get here over the River Tay near Dundee. We get beautiful sunsets here. A combination of the textures you've seen with a cracked base with another texture add to it. The egg is a duck egg. And if you look at I mean, obviously we've got the flare in there now. I'm sure if you remember the old days, anytime you went into a club competition, if you put in a picture with flare in it, you used to get into trouble for it, because you know, they would say you've got flare in your picture, but now you can actually use flare as a means of adding a little bit of interest to your image. Large and small, as I said before, I mean, the actual heads are tiny. They're only about 6 inches tall, photographed in a cafe. And so basically all I've done is just change the size in order to get the effect that I wanted. And again, taken in Venice, fantastic character, this chap in the front, because it's actually me. I did go and buy myself a mask and an outfit, as did my wife. And we decided that we'd have a bit of fun and we would go around Venice dressed up in order to get the effect of photographers coming to us rather than us going to them, which was really actually a very great experience because it was so much fun, worth doing, you know. The bear and old Hannah, young Hannah here, who's a friend of mine from Ireland. The bear is real. It was photographed in Alaska, and really all I've done is I've just taken the paw off and added it to the shoulder to give the feeling that it could work. Once again, you can see what's happening in the background, the textures and the trees, and but the base of this picture would have been just also the main part of that background, and all I would have done would have intensified the strength of that in order to get that effect. And again, and there's the girl that you saw earlier on, but that's her face. So she's not an ugly looking girl, but good fun. Photographed in a studio, and I've just put it into a backdrop for something just a little bit different. And I'm sure you'll recognize these buildings. Louis certainly will, because he was with me when I took them, because they're from the Popeye village. But again, the rocks there are actually only about 2-3 inches high. And so what I've done is just change the size. Again, it's that changing the proportions from small to big or big to small in order to get the effect I want. And again, linked to the texture. Believe it or not, the rock is actually the same rock. All I've done is just slightly altered it. And again, same sort of technique, building up, adding bits and pieces of it in order to create something very surreal and very, very different. Fish are all dead, believe it or not. They're all photographed in the museum. So it's raining fish in this particular picture. The character was photographed in Edinburgh Festival. And again, this one was photographed in Prague, and in this particular picture, he was a great character. So I've obviously added to this certain background. The chap in the background actually had legs, but for some reason or other, and I don't know why, I didn't want the legs, and I decided that I wanted to add some sort of stumps for some reason, But I just think it made the picture just a little bit more interesting, and asking the questions, why would a character be going about with, particularly like that? That's the same female you would have seen earlier on with the red and white, only in this particular case I've transferred it over to black and white. And obviously it's a Alice in Wonderland situation. The background I've totally created. So I've created the floor and I've created the walls in the background by adding a texture to give the feeling it's wallpaper in the background. And then I've added all the elements that would have been in Alice in Wonderland in order to get the effect that I wanted. There's the bear again, a different type of picture with a character from Edinburgh.
Rikki,
Yes,
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Rikki, I note that most probably you use a lot of compositing, right, in your Photoshop. Do you shoot separately all the photos that you use the composites? For example, I saw the cards. Did you shoot the cards separately yourself? So that, I mean, or did you use a particular type of overlay?
A particular type of
overlay. You brought that from another photo, for example.
Yeah, they're all individual images. They've all come from other images of hundreds of thousands of images. You know,
that you take.
Yes, that I've taken. Yes, they're all my images. This image here, the background here, was photographed in Alaska. The bird was actually photographed in Australia. The head and the horns was photographed in, believe it, in some sort of weird shop in Southern Ireland. And all I've done is add a real face to it. I've created my own texture moon and planets in the background in order to get the effect I want. Yeah, they're all individual images.
All individual images. And my other question would be, I mean, you've got experience in judging, and you've got extensive experience in competitions. The fact, which is very interesting, and that you're combining artistic and graphic elements, like as a cartoonist, combining them in a photograph. How do they fare in competitions when you have these types of mixture? Because it's not that common that we see these types of pictures in, for example, the ones that I see in competitions, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there would be, I mean, a lot of, an image like this could do. It's like everything. It's like any photograph. You know what I mean? I can honestly say that I've entered salons. I've been giving a 15 and 3/14s for 4 images in a salon and being given the top award. And I've sent the same 4 images to another salon and been given a 4 and 3/3s. So for the same images. So there is never a guarantee with what's going to happen. Something like this could do quite well. Depends on the judges. I mean, sometimes you get, the problem I think with judges is sometimes judges become biased against certain type of images, which automatically mark you, you're in trouble. So it's always quite nice if you put images in. It's good to put in a kind of variety, because that may well work for you, rather than 4. If the judges don't like it, you're dying a death. Or at the same time, if they love it, you could end off with a top award. But what I'll do is, when I'm going through some of the images, I'll say this one would have done quite well in the competition, or this one would have probably, I might not have put it in, because there's certain images here that I've done that I wouldn't put in into a salon, because I think they would struggle, because some judges would find it hard to get in their head what's actually happening with some of them, and whether in fact, is it photography, or is it art, which is obviously, a question that gets asked all the time, So, for instance, this image, I wouldn't have a problem putting this image in, because I think it fills everything as regards a type of image that could possibly do well in a creative section in a salon. The girl, the flowers have been added, the cloud, the text in the background. It's actually, I haven't actually used this anywhere, but it's one I would not be afraid of. Again, this is one that could create a problem, and the problem would be probably down to what I've done here, because it becomes more towards illustration to a certain extent, which might create a problem for some judges who can't understand what's about. But it can also work for you as well. This one has created, this is an image that does quite well with men, but does quite badly with women, because it was made and done. This girl here, I've actually exaggerated her head and tried to make it look like she's a young girl with an adult type body. And some women saw this as it was done round about the time when all the problems in the UK with the Jimmy Savile situation and that was going on. So there was an issue that could have gone with this one. This one is, again, it's a surreal image. It could possibly do reasonably well. It would probably get an acceptance. There's a chance it would get an acceptance, purely simply because of the content that it's in, as could probably this one. Two images that are basically done from more or less just about the same, the same main image, and just being slightly altered because of the texture and what I've done in the background with it.
We've got another question, Rick, from Alexander Kutayar. He's saying that on the same topic that followed my question, the fact that you added background as a form of texture, like doors example, he's saying, are these acceptable in competitions?
Yeah. As long as what you're doing is using photography. So I mean, although I'm drawing the shape, I'm actually putting in a texture which has been photographed. So it's been, textures are textures, and as long as the textures are your textures, there isn't an issue. And what you do with them, whether you're creating the shape or not, should not be a problem. I certainly, as a judge, would not have a problem with it. But as I said, some judges might, and that is their right to feel that might not be the form that they see as photography. I stand in a situation where I stand on a line where people will say, that's not photography, and I accept that. But it has worked very well for me because of the amount of awards that I've had with a lot of these images over the years and years. Again, simple situation, texture, background, bits and pieces added to it. The girl has been stretched a little bit. She wasn't actually holding a skull, she was just holding a little sphere, and all I've done is add skulls. And it's the same as actually has happened in this one. And this is one that could do well, it might not, it just depends. It could, I mean, it would not put it into an open competition, it would go into a creative competition. And there's the actual model herself, and what I've done is I've used that background of that I photographed in Alaska. I've added another background as the background, and I photographed the moon. And the wolf was photographed in a museum. So I've actually just added that in order to get the effect. Lots of elements have gone into there to get that. And then you've got this image here, which is, the ice fields in Alaska. And I like this image. I put this yak type character in there. Now it's not real, it was actually photographed in a shop. And I've actually put it in there to give the effect. But what I liked about it was I liked the shape of the ice block that was coming on the left. So what I did with it was I did that in order to just give it a bit of life. I thought there was a bit of fun about that because it did look like an animal's head to me. So that's, and I would be tempted to try that. It's a hit or miss image. I might be tempted to try that one. Now what you've got here is you've got what I've done with the next 2 or 3 images, and I'll just flick through them, are images where I've used watercolor paper and just put water and run some ink over it, and then a flatbed scanned it, and I've used that as a background and then added the characters to it. The bear here is stuffed. The lion is real, as is the bird. But as you can see by the blotches and everything, what I'm trying to do, still create a photographic image, but with a little bit more artistic feel to it, in order to try and get something a little bit different. The little partridge, the little pheasant here is stuffed. It's not real. It was photographed in a museum, and again, it's just been added to a watered texture, which I've photographed and then used. It could well have been the color that was originally a color texture, and I would have converted it over to mono. And again, in both these characters here, both these animals are actually photographed in the local museum in Dundee, so they're not actually real. But this girl on the horse is real. So that's an actual girl on a horse, adding into this watercolor effect that I've used in order to give my texture background. Some monochrome images, again, just a fun image. Two characters were photographed in Edinburgh. The background, I waited and waited because I couldn't get images of the Punch and Judy's. I was in London, and just by chance in Covent Garden, and believe it or not, there was a fete going on in the churchyard in Covent Garden, and it was a Punch and Judy fete. And I went in there, and there was about 50 Punch and Judy stalls. It was, it was almost a dream come true. I spent years trying to get Punch and Judy's, and so this was the image I made. That image has done exceptionally well for me as a monochrome image. Using two different images in Venice here into the monochrome. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 images in here. That's all there is, all put together and blended together in order to create. The girl would have had a mask, but what I've done is I've put a face in there rather than just the mask. Pretty girl, just decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different with it, so I've created this skyscape situation with it basically in the background, but also coming from her head. That is an image that's done quite well. And this one here, which is the same girl, trying to put over the girl with a pearl earring. Just a purely straightforward image against a texture background. Took a little while getting her all sorted out with her bits and pieces to try and give the feeling that that's what I was trying to put over. But I've done this one in colour as well. Again, simple image. This image was photographed in New York, and there was lots of people in here. And what I did was I've taken out most of the people. This girl was actually speaking to someone. I've taken that person out, but I left that character in because I felt that the character added a little bit of interest. The fact that she's standing there, he turns around, and then there's this beautiful thing in the background, this painting on a wall. Now, when you look at that and you think, same type of image, you can do things that are different. So I did this one, basically set in the same situation, treated it slightly different, turned the girl round, changed the feeling of the background into something a little bit stronger, a little bit more dramatic. So it lets you see that you've got certain pictures, you can do more than one thing with to get something out of it. This image here is, believe it or not, this girl may look as though she's absolutely 100% real, but the only thing that's real about it are the eyes, nose and the mouth. I actually drew the shape of the body and dropped in textures in there. The dress, the cover that she's holding and a hairband are actually as a wrapping paper that I photographed. But the things in the background were photographed and added to the image. I did a whole series of images based around Vogue, and I loved everything to do with Vogue, and I loved the way they broke the images up and the things that they did with them. And so this image started off with this girl. Now you can see it's a real face. All I've done is just contort the face a little bit. The hat has been made out of a wrapping paper. The shawl was made out of photographing some grass. And then all I've done is just added some pearls that a fat blade scanned. And I happened to be in London. I was fortunate enough to be at a film set while I was traveling through London. And I came across this film set and they were photographing these old fashioned images. I put that together. This was some years ago, was a very, very, very successful image for me. Drew the shape, but it's a real eyes, nose and mouth I put in there. It's real hair from another image, and flatbed the earring and made a ring out of it. And it's only the mask is only about 5 inches in its size. I've done a little bit of warping and changing it in the background to give a sort of feel. You can see how it runs through the base, but the warp that's in the background has actually come from part of the image. So basically what I've done, it's just been a blending. And again, drew the shape here and added the textures. The hair is actually has come from a photograph of one of my wife's jumpers. You know, one of the jumpers she wore, as is the dress. So just by doing that, just, you know, it just gives it a different feel, makes it feel a little bit different. And so I've drawn the shape and I've changed the eyes, nose and mouth, which are real people's, a real person's nose, eyes and mouth, in order to get the effect. But I've had to alter it to fit the type of face. And again, exactly the same.
Rikki, we've got another comment, interesting comment,
okay,
from Leonard Cox.
Okay.
He's saying, obviously, first of all, he's commending your work, amazing work. Creativity is something that he fails in, he says. Can you share with us how we can get creative, how do you get the inspiration to create these amazing imagery? Now, obviously, this brings me to Picasso's quote, good artists copy, great artists steal, they say. Obviously, in the fact that you can get creative by looking at others' work.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have to be, I mean, inspiration is very, very important. And I'm inspired by lots and lots of people. So it's worth, you know, looking at everything. You go to galleries, you look at magazines, you look at how things are done in photographs. You go to, you know, art, any form of art. I get inspirations from children's books, all sorts of things. And yeah, it's about looking at other people's work and saying, wow, I love that effect. Can I create something that gives that kind of similar feel using my own photographs? And that's how I approach it, everything that I do.
Thank you.
These are, you know, Venice images, and these introduction images to Venice, you know, actually led to the images that are coming up now, which were actually, some of these images were part of my Irish fellowship that I gained. And, you know, in the particularly making these images, I did in the region of about, I created about 40 images in one night. And, you know, and it was easy enough to do the 40 images because it's like everything, you create a system. So everyone was created very quickly in the same sort of way. So 40 images were created in one night, but in order to get a panel of 20, it took me about 6 weeks in order to try and sort out from those which would be the best panel for me in order to get my fellowship. So these are just some of the images I did. And all I wanted to do was take away the straightforward. It's easy to get the images in Venice because they're there for you. So, and they're all good images, but in order to get something that's a little bit different, you have to do something different. So that's really what I've tried to do with these images, with a mix and a blend of all different types of images, trying to do something that's a little bit different and a little bit more creative. And then, of course, if you're in Venice, you go to Burano. All I've done here was tidy the images up, because when you go to Burano is covered with pipes and bits and pieces and parts of windows, and, you know, and all I've done here is I've just taken those out and tried to simplify the image as much as I possibly can, and then softened it and diffused it in order to get, so I'm looking for very simple graphic shapes in order to get the effect I wanted with this. These three images here are actually images that came from an early trip to, that were all done in monochrome, all photographed in the old film effect, where I've printed them, and in each case I've actually masked off the boat and masked off the in this particular case the steps with a masking fluid, and I've airbrushed the background in order to get something a little bit different. And I always include them because they're still some of my favourite images. Textures and models, and once again you can see the texture blended into the character. The face on this girl was not the original girl that was there. I've put in a totally different face into that to get the effect. And again, you can see the background, I've got textures, and all these are all brushes that I've created and painted. So I'm blending the girl into that texture in the background, and then I'm putting painted effects on top of that, just to give it that more art feel about it. And again, same sort of effect. Now, if you look at the background in this one closely, that's actually it's a slate background. It's actually slate and a wall of slate, and it's reflected on the base, because you can actually just see the horizon of the base of the rock where it becomes water. So it's a combination of that, and again a little bit of painting work on the top of that in order to give the effect. And this applies to this. And again, I'm using the same effect here with blending textures into the girl's face in order to get the effect that I want. In this particular case, this was actually photographed in a shop window, and what I've done is I've added real eyes to it and just brought it alive, just to give it that feel, and then added the ethereal sort of space effect around it, just to make it a little bit more different. The image that you've seen that I sent you, which is monochrome, this is the colour version of it. Now, this was actually a mask that was on a wall in a pub, and all I've done is taken the plastic mask out of it and put a real face into it, and then blended it into the background, and then added my bird, my famous bird. And again, the girl that you've seen before, and this, the texture that was there was photographed at the museum. It was just some massive ball that sparkled, and that's all I've done in order to give the effect of this one. But once again, using the painting techniques, idea of photography, and then using my splatter effects where I've created, these are all brushes that I've created. I have hundreds and hundreds of brushes that I make. And for instance, actually, I've actually got, I could just show you this. I'll just show you this if you could actually see that. That's about to become a brush. I'm actually going to flatbed scan that, and I can actually then paint that, and it will come up as leaves, you know. So that was just to give you an idea what it's like. So really, that's what's done there. I've created splattered effects, flatbed scanned them, made a brush from it, and then I painted with it. And again.
Rikki, we've got another question from Charles Calleja. He's asking that he's seeing your images in square format.
Yes.
He is asking, is that a style you stick to, and why? And obviously he's saying he loves the square format.
Sure. Square format is right from the early days of my photography. When I first joined Dundee Photographic Society, and I joined that as obviously a novice as far as photography went, but I was kind of overpowered by the gurus at the club at that time who were into the large format sort of photography, strong square images. And I just felt that square images is the strongest format. And so I would say that 99.9% of my images are probably all square, including my artwork. When I create my artwork, I tend to make them square. For me, it is the strongest format. And again, all the hair and the textures there have all been done using brushes in order to get the effect. But the cloud effect, again, is a straightforward, simple background, but the cloud effect I've painted because I've photographed the clouds and made brushes from them. This one, in this particular case, as you can see, is very much a paint effect. So what I've done, I've just actually painted on screen. I've taken the photograph, taken some brush, taken some colour and painted with it. I would not put this type of image into a salon because it might get slated purely and simply because of that. Then you've got, you know, things like this. The girl was photographed in a studio, and the background has been, created, has been photographed, an old building, and just put together. And I think the next 4 pictures are all taken with basically with the two same models. Similar sort of effect. So the girls have been photographed in a studio or just in a house effect, and then I've created the background and added them to it to make it a little bit different. This one took a little bit of while to get because it had to be pieced together, not just by the face, but the hand came from another image and was put into it. I've photographed the flowers and added it. I photographed the hair and put in it, but as you can see, there's swirls. So I've actually painted the swirls out using a brush that breaks the image up and in order to get the effect. This is one of my favourite images. I've always liked this image. I'm not convinced it would do very well, but it's just one that I like. Again, having fun. What I did here is the body shape I would have created, so it's not a real body, but I've added real textures into that body shape, and then I've added a head to it where I've slightly altered it. The headgear was actually on a mannequin. It was on an actual mannequin, and it was in a shop when I was in Alaska, and it was in a shop there. So basically, I've just removed the mannequin's head and put her in there. Same sort of effect, doing exactly the same. The original girl's face was not that face. I've put a totally new face into that one for it to work for me. And again, you see the face, monochrome, and everything around it has been added to it. All lots of textures and bits and pieces in order to give the effect, but still trying to create something that is photographic, but also a piece of art. And again. And again. I know we're saying they're hitting the 6 o'clock mark, or it'll be 7 o'clock over there. There's still quite a bit to go. Do you want me to carry on?
Rikki, we're good in time. Generally, we stop between 7:30 and 7:45, our local time. So yours will be 6:30 or 6:45.
Okay, that's fine. Good. We'll carry on. That's good. Thank you.
Yes.
So once again, here we go. As you can see, a real face, and that is, you know, and apart in the leaves at the bottom, and the little earrings there are actually, although I put that texture into them, they were actually real earrings. But that's the only thing that's real in there, apart from the texture in the background. And then I've created this effect, you know. So I've still got a piece of photographic work, and I've also got a painting. The odd situation is whether, in fact, you know, something like this I might be tempted to put into a salon, because it's very much more photographic. Because basically what I've done is I've photographed a quilt, and I've warped it all in order to create the effect I've got here. You know, I mean, they're love or hate images, and I know that, but just trying to do something that's a little bit different, and it just takes out the normal comfort zone of normal photographs. Same again. The hair here is actually a ball of coloured wool, which I've actually photographed and warped in order to create the hair. And the little dangling things are actually sitting up here on my wall at the back here. But the shape of the head and the body, I've actually drawn that and then filled it up with textures in order to get the effect that I wanted. And again, done exactly, but the face is a real face. So the eyes are real, the nose is real, and the mouth is real. They've come from another image, and I've changed the sizes of them in order to make them very, very different. And again, so very much lots of texture in there. The eyes, nose and mouth are real. The earrings are pearls, which are real. And obviously I've just repeated that, put it in the background. It's real hair, but I've actually duplicated it and made it into a much larger mop of hair. And the dress has also been made, that has been photographed. That was actually a wallpaper that I photographed, and I've used a brush, make a brush from it and painted it in. The same person, and I'll just duplicate it, apple and pear. And again, using the face, this has taken me into fantasy, because this is where, you know, things like the faces become very important for me, because I'm a very great fan of an artist called Nicola Ciccoli, who lives in San Marino in Italy. I'm a great fan of her children's artwork, and she inspired me to think about doing something a little bit different with my photography, and that's where it comes. Now here's one that's worked. This image has actually won a gold medal for me, and purely with simply what I've done with it. So it's a totally real body. It's a real face, but it's been altered in order to suit, to give it a different sort of feel to it.
Rikki, many are commenting the fact how you blend these particular faces, and we've got a question from Noel Portelli.
Okay.
He's asking you, do you use Illustrator to do these faces when you do the graphical part, or do you do everything in Photoshop?
Everything is done in Photoshop. Everything is done in Photoshop, and everything is done with the mouse. I don't use a pen. I do all my painting, my drawing, and I do it all with the mouse. I taught myself for the mouse early on, and my wife bought me a tablet and a pen, and I started to use it, and I found it was all over the place. I couldn't get out to work. the way I wanted to. So basically what I do is I use the mouse. I use the mouse and I can draw and I can paint and I create everything using the mouse. As I've done in this particular image here, you know, which is a girl. It's her face I've altered. It's her hands that are coming out like this. And all the bits and pieces have all been photographed in order to create a fantasy type image. I did a whole series of them for an exhibition. And again, in fact, this doll in that chair was actually photographed outside a little place in Gozo, if I remember rightly. But the girl's face is from a girl from Ireland. And again, these things like this where illustrations, you know, influenced me a lot, and I've used candy sticks and I've warped them in this particular case. Added lollipops. The girl, you've seen the girl before. She's sitting on just one of these things from a carnival. I've got, there's my snail again that you saw earlier on, but I've actually put a real face. That's a real face that I've put into that in order to get the effect, and stuck a little mouse there, which is actually made out of stone. Again, a real face that's been altered and changed. That has been made with a brush, and the arms have come off one of my nudes. Sorry about that. My dog barking in the background. I'll just close my door a little bit. She could be rather noisy when someone arrives at the door. So, you know, so yeah. And again, you know, so what I've got here, this is a mannequin model, and I put a real face on it and altered it. And the bird was actually photographed in Lanzarote. And this was actually, from the whole my exhibition of fantasy, this was actually the cover of the little book that I did, using, you know, a mannequin there, and I put the face, but I've altered the face and altered the ears and put butterfly wings on the back in order to get the effect. But that's real eyes, nose and the mouth in the photograph of the moon. And this particular one here was the one that started it off, all, you know, the one of Hey Diddle Diddle. And what I did for this particular one was actually, I drew the images of the cat and dog the way I wanted them. But I photographed the cat and I photographed the dog, and then chopped the photograph up to fit my drawing. So basically the head's been taken off a photograph of the dog, and I've altered it. I made the eyes a little bit bigger. I've chopped off their legs and their arms in the actual photograph of the dog to add to my drawing. And I've done the same with the cat. And what you've got here, it's a real cow coming across there, and that's a real face that's on the plate and the spoon, and it's real arms and legs that have come from the nudes that I've photographed in order to get the effect there. Again, just the use of textures, again, having a little bit of fun and changing the style of the face in order to get the effect that I wanted. And that was, if you remember the picture early on where you saw the chap I photographed in Prague with a lad in the background with the wooden legs, the stumps, that's actually that character there, which I've changed in order to give it a bit of weird effect. And the same, again, this was a mannequin. I put a real face into it and added and created this background. And the church in the background is a church that's about 4 miles away from where I live. This particular image has been totally created, apart from obviously where you've got the albino deer in the background. Everything in this image, and also apart from the faces, but the background, the trees, the dress, the hats, and the necklet things have all been created from the background. So basically what you've got there is one texture, and the one texture I've made the trees, because it's just a matter of drawing the shape on there and playing about with the opacity in order to change the feel of that, as it is with the base in the back, and the same of that texture in there is the same texture that's in the background. And again, that texture there is the same texture as in there, as in there, as in there. And I've just added these bits to create the picture. Again, same sort of effect. The girl's body is actually a girl that was sitting on the back of a horse, but it wasn't that particular horse. It was she was on a real horse, and I've just added a different head to it. And again. One of my favorite images is this image here. And when I think about the work I did, because all the licorice, all sorts, and all these little bits and pieces that are in there, I photographed and added to it. And they were all photographed individually at a children's museum. The girl is a real girl, and I've altered the face. The cake is real. The arms have come off, as I said before, off one of my nudes. And the dress that's in the background was actually also photographed in the Children's Museum. Lots going on in here, and that's a real figure. It's but put with a different head on. Go on, somebody else. Sorry, I thought somebody was going to say something there. I mean, the owl is actually photographed in the museum. The same effect again. So the base of this image is real. That has been created in order to get the effect. And the hat has come off a totally different image. And then I've just added the bits and pieces in the background, which are all real images that I've photographed.
We've got a very good question from Peter, from Peter Bartolo Parnis. He's saying, on average, how many layers to produce such art? He is asking.
Yeah, it varies quite a bit. In lots of situations, there's quite a lot of variation. But all I would say is that, you know, for instance, this picture here, I would say you've got a background, you've got two pictures, you've got the individual bits and pieces. So there's about 6, 7, 8, 9 layers there. The arms would be a layer. The toy box would be a layer, the dress is a layer, the hair and the face layer. So in this particular, there would be probably maybe about 20 layers, but I never work with 20 layers open. So I would be working on the background and I would be happy with that. Then I would flatten that particular, you know, once I get a point, I flatten it and save it and then add the other bits to it. So in some cases, there wouldn't be much more than 20 in some images. In some cases, a lot less. In this particular case, you've got probably flower bat head in the background, which are just local photographed in my house, and the girl's head and the dress, the arms, and the two birds. So you're talking 6 or 7 layers.
I think over here, it's a very good practice. I'm sure you would agree with me, Rikki, that when you're working with such, with having many layers, it is a good practice that you save different files. For example, if an image is called oranges.psd, you say oranges 1, oranges 2, oranges 3, because you can get a file which is easily corrupted. And if you have so many layers in one file that is corrupted, then you're you're in trouble. So
yeah, that's probably true. I don't actually quite work with it. I'm quite lazy about things. I very rarely name my individual bits and pieces, and in a lot of cases, I'm not concerned because in most cases, I work exceptionally quick. So if something happens, and it doesn't happen very often, but it has happened where I've got a point and something's happened that crashes and I lose everything, which I have done, I just start again. I mean, so I'm not overly worried too much about it. But I take your point. Yes, in most cases, you know, it is wise to do exactly that, you know, but I tend to be a little bit lazy that way. I'm not a person who wants to work a length of time. I work exceptionally quickly, and if it's not working for me, then I either bin it instantly or I stick it into a file because I think there's possibly something there that I could use later on. You know? So in this particular image, you can see it's just been again, it's the head, the face has been chased. the eyes are real, the nose is real, the mouth. And then I've just added the textures, which have come off from actually from an Indian headwear in order to get the effects. But letting you see that when you've got one type of image and what you could do with it, from this type of image, I did that, which is very, very different. But it's, you know, it's letting you see that it's that creative thing. You've got one picture, what else can you do with it? And often I do go back and look at old images, and bring them forward, and I think, how can I create something that'll make that a little bit different now? And so this is what I've done with that particular image. And again, just playing about with it. Background has been created, it's not real. The neck is obviously, you can see, is not a real neck. The shape of her body is not real, but I've tried to create that effect. But I brought in a real hand and a real bird, and the little puppet head is real also. Simple image here, but one of my favourites, and don't ask me why, but it's just one I like. So again, you've got the same situation, the way I've created everyone. Texture in the background, which is running from sand into water into a sky. Then I brought a hand in from another picture in order to give the effect there. Using real bits and pieces. The animal I said you've seen before was stuffed. The two characters are real characters, but I put more illustration type faces onto them. And the leaves in the top there are actually a brush from a real leaf. And I could create a scatter brush, which allows me to, I could just press it and it'll put lots of leaves over the top of the image. And again, we've got the same situation. You've got a real person, but I've got to put a different head to get the effect. Texture in the bottom, and the building there, which you'll see a couple of times because I use this building quite a lot, which was just photographed in a children's museum. Just trying to do something that's a little bit different and a little bit eye-catching. And again, the dog in the background was not real, believe it or not. It was actually in a great big glass box on the top of inside in a pub, believe it or not. Obviously, it was dead and being stuffed. Move on to some of the early images now. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time because there's still quite a few to see. I might just run through them. But this is going back to the early days of my early prints where I worked in very, very soft images, and I love soft images. In this particular case, it's, you know, the girl was photographed as a model shoot for hair, and she was just standing about, and I asked her to do a couple of twirls, and that was it. And then I was in Guernsey and photographed the stairway and added to it. This one's called Cruella, same sort of situation. The blur effect, the girl with the dogs, and there's a space at the top of this image, and I just felt that what I needed to do was add something there. So I've just used a blur stairway in the top to just add a little bit of interest. And again, everything very soft. These were not done for digital imagery, these were done purely for a print effect. And this one, the girls, these three were just photographed in a shop window. And I've just basically at that time, I airbrushed out all the background. So I just washed the background away and then kept what I wanted in order to get the effect that I wanted, and added the butterflies. And there's the polar bear that you would have seen way earlier on. And I mean, the texture in the background is just whitewashing a window. That's all it is in order to get that effect. And the girl from, obviously, was photographed in Edinburgh. And again, the simplicity of just photographing a mannequin in a shop window, and then just creating the pearls was the most important part, but obviously trying to keep a little bit of life in the model, but keeping it very, very soft. And this is the image that moved me away from using film to digital. I bought myself a digital camera, and this was the first, basically just about the first image that I printed out from a digital camera, a little small digital, probably 2 megapixel, nothing special. But I was so pleased with what I got with it that this become exceptionally successful image. Actually, I think it actually won me a camera in a magazine competition. And I have large prints of this made. It's called The Hangers. The only thing about this one was that the shadows were quite strong, but there was a light that was coming in. It was from the right that was creating these shadows. And all I did was just soften the shadows down. Again, just a shot taken out of the garden, simple vase, nothing to it, just straightforward. And of course, the ponies that were photographed in a forest. And once again, all I did at that particular time was wash away the background, just paint the images out using the airbrush, digital airbrush. Same girl in this image, I used in this image and that image, but just using her as a means of trying to create the effect I want. I'm just going to try and move on a little bit because there's still one or two that you have to see. So this image started off just with the girl and the actual shape of the dress, and I stretched it down there and I left it for, I knew there were something in images, but it wasn't working just as that image until I added, strangely enough, the little leaves and the flowers, and then it came together as an image and started to work. Simple images, photographed in Gibraltar, this, but I've just taken away other bits and pieces in order to just give it a simple effect. And again, simple effect. The sheep and the ewe were photographed in a barn, so I've taken them out and put them into this background. Straightforward cow against the texture background. I'm going to go through these. Same, all treated exactly the same way. This is my dog that you've been hearing barking about at the moment. Again, just keeping it nice and soft in and into the texture background. The squirrel is not real, it's a stuffed squirrel, but added to the texture in the background. And there's the famous four-legged animal again. This is, again, a stuffed swan. I'm gonna run through one or two of these images because I think there's still a few still to come. Just so you can just see the effect that I was trying to create using a similar type of texture in each one. And most of these would probably been using the blending mode soft light, because it's that, I mean, using a second layer and just dropping a whole color of white into it and then going into soft light, it gives you a lovely feel to it. Again, just creating nothingness. The character was photographed in Calgary, but obviously he was photographed in the street. But I've put him into this background just to make it a little bit different. And again, the blending of the characters into textures was just part of the image coming out. Actually works really, really quite well for me. And then this particular image is where, do you like my shoes? Where the girl's been again used against that background texture. And the dog was photographed in Cuba. So I've actually put that dog in there and in order to give the feel that I wanted for that particular image. The background, she wasn't there. She was photographed in the studio. So I've taken her from the studio and put her into the background that I want. Some nude images here, again, photographed outside, but then added into something. This was trying to tell, so you can see I'm trying to tell the time. Like that's called 11:45, I think it was. Textures, you can see the clocks in the background. And again, a little bit of displacement here, which I've created just by drawing the little shapes, duplicating them, and playing about with the light and opacity and that in order, and then moved them slightly in order to get the effect. But again, using the nudes and using them into a form of texture works here as well. Just doing something a little bit different and makes them a little bit more interesting. New York, again, just playing about with double images, treble images, just playing about and then leaving something in it that's a little bit more sharp than the background. And again there, the ice skating. And if you look, you can see there are duplications of the buildings. So trying to create a photographic image that's still actually becoming photographic painting. In this particular one, I like this one because, you know, I say I'm photographing from a height from the Empire State Building, and the idea was to make sure that I had the yellow taxi. You know, the very much important yellow taxi was needed. You know, mannequins, love mannequins, as I said before, but I'm always trying to make them look like, you know, some form of painterly effect, by adding textures and colours to them in order to create an image that is, again, as I said, is very much photographic, but very much, you know, almost could be a piece of art. So in each case, this is what's done, just using mannequins and little bits of textures in the background. Now these images coming up here are part of a whole series I did in an exhibition I had called Another Place. And what you've got here, well, you'll probably recognise the background here because it's Dundee, but everything that's in here has been created from using textures and from me going out on creative walls, and in order to create what I'm trying to do are fantasy places, but places that could be, you might think maybe actually exist, but they don't actually exist. You know, so they, you know, the shops, you know, the ice cream van there, are all real. The buildings are all created just from a texture, and I've put the windows and the chimneys in that I photographed from the local village in order to get the effect that I want. And so each one of them is exactly how I've created those. So very much photographic, but very much, you know, unreal. And again, I mean, even down to the boats are actually being created from textures. I get a texture, and what I do is I warp the shape of that texture into the feel that I want. Digital technique in order to get the feel that I want. The houseboat, which again is just done using created, and I mean everything in there are actually, the Phoenix is a local pub in Dundee. You know what I mean? It's, you know, great fun to do, a great exercise, something a little bit different. Also creating something that's, like I said before, big and small, altering the changes, and that's what's been done here. An artist called Anna Pugh, English artist, creates her paintings, and these have come from seeing her paintings and what she does. I've decided to do something similar. Some monochrome, repeated images, and just one where the veils come off. So very dark picture with the girl coming forward. And in this particular case, it's one where I've turned the head round and kept it in colour in order to make it a bit different. Using textures again in order to create the big rocks, the large buildings on the side there, and then just adding something, the sky in the background, the character in the base. Couple on a pier, heading off in the pier, and all I've done here is create the moon effect or a planet effect and put a doorway in it. So it's this thought of what's happening, where are these characters going? And again, just trying to create something, a storytelling situation of a character heading into something, the unknown. I like images from the back because I think from the back there's a lead into your picture, and it makes you start to think what's actually going to happen. This one again is relating to the size, again, character running up through the cloud. And once again, the same situation. This character was actually suspended in the air, and all I've done is take away the wires and created another wire to give it a feel he was actually coming down that wire. And again, just trying to do something a little bit different that actually makes you think something a little bit different and out of the box in order to get the feel. The buildings here should actually be turned to right. What I've done, the buildings I've turned to, I've turned them 90 degrees counterclockwise, and in order to create that different feel, and then used one of these street arcs in there, you know, in order to create something different. This particular case, again, it's photographing the image, which would have been photographed basically more or less straight on. I've flattened the image in order to create a different feel and a different perspective of that, and then put the character on it and make it different. Charlie on the Moon, again, the back effect, looking in. And this particular thing, a new beginning, you know. Blocks I've actually created, they weren't photographed, I actually created them as an art piece basically, and then added the buildings and the birds and the Gormley man. And again, you know, there's a power that you get from something looking into the picture. And coming up, I'll just run through these. These are actually images, what might look like they're straight images. Unfortunately, you don't get straight images from me. They're all pieced together. And these were images I photographed in Ireland. But do remember, they are actually composites. I'll just run through them. But they're as close to what you might get as a straightforward and a real picture from me. But unfortunately, they're not. They have been put together. Strangely enough, 3 or 4 of these have done exceptionally well. 2 or 3 images, again, using the same technique as I said before, using the that soft light effect, you know, from just some images from Cuba, that just make them just, you know, just a little bit different, a little bit of fun. Great characters, you know, great fun to do. But again, composites pieced together in order to get the effect. And then just some colour images that I liked. This was done in relation to the black and white one. I just wanted to do a modern version in colour of that one. And again, one texture in the background, so everything that's been shaped has all been created from the one texture. There's an American photographer called Jamie Hayden, and I'm very impressed by the type of work she does. So she's kind of influenced me into this sort of effect that I've got here. Space in them was a little bit different, you know. Buildings here were photographed in Belgium. And again, as I did with the shots of the seaside shots, done exactly the same, just a building that's been created from textures, and the little character was photographed in Ireland. Yeah, that is actually one of these Japanese miniature trees, and then added the house to the top of it, added the ladder, and there's a little girl's face in the window that she's holding onto the kite. This one's fairly recent that I've done. Using textures, and there's the building again. This one's very, very simple. There's only about 4 images in there in order to get the effect that I wanted with that one. And this one here, believe it or not, what I did with this one, because we're just about at the end, is the fact that this face was actually a large white face that sat for a while on the outside Selfridges in London. And so what I've done is actually added all these elements to that face and put the mask on and painted up the face in order to get the effect. And the Indians in the back are actually real. I photographed these Indians and the wigwams. And this image here is I put in at the end because it is actually probably, it was my very, very first really successful print. It's called The Postcard, and it's still one of my favourite images. The girl will be probably well into her 50s now, because she was probably about 14 or 15 when I photographed her. The postcard was meant a lot because the girl's face there was on the other side of the postcard, and the postcard was sent to Patrick Kilmartin, who was actually a relation to my wife. And there's a postcard from a girl to him, and for some reason or other we ended up getting this postcard back. after he was killed on the first day. He was out in World War One. He went out there to fight as an 18-year-old and was killed, and basically on that first day. So there you go. That's the end. I've rushed through a little bit at the end here because I was very aware of the time situation. Lots of bits and pieces there. I'm sure there's some you've liked, there'll be some you've hated, there's some you'll be just wondering what the hell goes through my head, I'm sure, as well. But thank you so much for the invite. It was an absolute pleasure to get back and speak to you and meet up with old friends once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rikki. I'm sure everyone agrees from the comments and from how much there were many questions asking us. One webinar that we really had questions because people were really interested, and it was really inspirational. I think as an observation, the key to such a success in your works is, maybe you would agree with me, is the representation of colors, the choice of colors that you use, how you blend your compositing. And one tip maybe which we can give our audience here, of those particularly interested to do these works, is to do research, especially the color theory, to see how harmonious colors work together. I mean, there's a whole theory to start with as an artist. And I think we were really right, Stephen, to say today that art and photography really converged.
Hats off to you, Rikki. Awe-inspiring, distinguished work. Rikki is capable to explore and create wonderful images, as you have seen today. He's not afraid to be different. Sometimes one needs to get the plunge and experiment with his photography. Artists like Rikki are an inspiration to most of us, as Vince is also telling us, and that is why the Society is seeking to bring you different artists every Thursday. So that one get eloquent and poignant in his artistic works. The Society encourages you members to be imaginative, to not be scared to change and present different works. A judge or a competition shouldn't discourage you. If you believe in what you produce, then you must keep moving. Photography, as all other artistic mediums, is a form of expression, and one needs to feel at ease and comfortable with what he is producing. Rikki, as Vince was saying, everyone here wrote words of praise for your illustrative award-winning images. Thank you once again for your impressive work and superb clean presentation, and hope to see you again in Malta. And when you decide to come again, contact us, and we will meet and organize something together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.
We thank also, obviously, Lewis for scouting and for getting to know you, and obviously bringing your work to so that our audience can really appreciate the works that you have. Stephen, before we leave, I'm going to share because I'm going to share, if you can see my screen, this is the promo for our next webinar next week. It is very important that obviously those who are going to send us their images, and we urge you that there are quite a good number to send us their one photo, obviously, to send us these on both these emails over here, chairman@mpsmalta.com and photoscopomalta@gmail.com by Tuesday, 27th April 2021. This is, as we say, this is a good opportunity to get the right feedback from seasoned photographers, which we choose on our panel, so that you can get creative ideas, different ideas, opinions, how to better your photography. So this is a great opportunity not to lose this type of discussions that usually go really well.
To join you, Vince, last time we had 19 images, so try to send them by time so that we organize these images, and also get on board different judges, or also we will ask you to give your assessment, give your ideas, your comments about what others produce to help them, that's important, to help them improve their photography. All of us are in a journey to improve our photography, and comments from others will help to improve our work.
So this brings us, obviously, if there aren't any more questions directed to Rikki, we can start to conclude. Thank you. We really want to thank our numerous audience. You had a lovely crowd, Rikki, today, joining our webinars. Thank you to all those joining this webinar. Before, obviously, we remind you not to join us only next week, but to join the judging session next Saturday for the stay-at-home competition. And obviously, till we see you again, we thank you and hope to stay safe, obviously. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.